Hi everyone, I think we're just about going to get started. So welcome to the Industry Insights series webinar. This week it's called Moving to the Dark Side. And I just have a couple of housekeeping points before we kick off. So you are all muted as it is normal on webinars, and that's for our benefit as well as yours. It's actually the only time we get to speak without being interrupted, but I can't promise that we won't interrupt each other. And if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat and we will come to questions at the end. So it would be great to get questions to have a discussion at the end. This is a 30-minute webinar, but we will depend on questions and we will get stuck into it. So.
I almost interrupted you already, Simon, but I was trying to be polite.
I was ready for it. So hopefully we have met many of you that are on this webinar. I'm Simon Dandy, my title is VP of Product Evangelism, and I'll let Joy introduce herself.
And I'm Joy Heath-Rush, and I'm the VP of Client Development. And if you don't know what any of those, either of those titles mean, then good. We have a good first question.
So hopefully you all get that when we say moving to the dark side, we mean moving from being inside a law firm to being a vendor. And we are just two of a number of people that we know that have made that shift. And in our organization, there are at least 10 of us. And I think most are from IT and law firms, but we also have several lawyers. And the great thing is we're all customer facing. And that means that we get to go out and talk to customers and really understand what's going on in your world, and have a certain amount of credibility as we do that, because we have built-in empathy because we've been through things on that side. But we often get questions, particularly when we're talking to people we know well, about what the differences are and how we like it on this side of the tracks. So we just thought it would be a fun webinar topic to show a little transparency and give you a little look through our lens. But actually, this is just a great chance for Joy and I to catch up and to have some fun. So it's great that you guys are listening, but we're going to have some fun anyway. So Joy, over to you.
Well, I love this slide, and actually Simon has been doing little tricks on me all day. So if there are slides that come up here and it takes me a second to start, just understand it's because he put in one I haven't seen before, and that's how we roll. But we couldn't have a better slide than this to say passion is what led us here. I mean, Simon and I have been friends for many years, way before we ever worked together. And we actually met on a vendor advisory board, is how we started really getting to be friends. And we were on the Latera customer advisory board. And we did that because we were passionate about the products that we were delivering to our end users. He was at Freshfields, I was at Sidley. And then when we both moved to the vendor side, it was our continued passion for a product line. It was a passion for being of service that put us in the position to move to the vendor side.
Right, so what we're going to talk about is really who we are. I'm going to share a few of our career stories and show you our path, how we got here. And then we're going to see what are the fundamental differences and similarities based on our experiences, and what's the same, and also maybe a few surprises along the way on what we've learned. So we'll move on from the dark side of the moon to Joy's story.
Hopefully there were a lot of you that were Pink Floyd fans that know Dark Side of the Moon, and definitely Simon picked this one for me, this particular slide, because for those of you who know me, and there are some familiar people out there, you know that I'm passionate about drag racing, which is probably a surprise. So, you know, that's cool. But a little bit about my journey. I've been in this legal technology biz a really long time. I actually started in 1982. I wish I could say I were in kindergarten then. I wasn't. I was right out of college. And I actually worked for a place that's kind of like Regis now. or WeWork. It was shared office space, and most of the people in my office space were solo practitioner lawyers or small law firms. And I did word processing, among other things, which in the 80s was the only thing there was that was technology. I have to tell you, I was scared to death of technology when I started, and I was sure I was going to get fired as soon as I started working on those crazy computers. And halfway through my first training, I was like, boy, am I hooked. I'm absolutely positively hooked. But so I was kind of on the vendor side, if you think about it to begin with. That was an interesting job because I was both inside law firms and a vendor to law firms. So I always kind of had to straddle that fence. Then I had the great good fortune to go to work for Sidley Austin. I spent 28, yes, that's a long time, 28 years at Sidley Austin in a whole variety of roles, from word processing to managing the global desktop for the enterprise. I can't tell you how much I learned there. And then I made the jump to the quote unquote real dark side for the vendors. And I had been on Latera's customer advisory board with Simon, as I said. And Deepak kept saying, please come to work for us, please come to work for us. Our founder, Deepak Masand, who was an amazing man for those of you that know him. And he said he wanted me to come and work in the sales organization. And I said, but Deepak, I've never done sales in my entire life. And he said, no, but you've been a great buyer. And that taught me a lot about what I needed to know about being a good vendor. The fact that I should put myself in the shoes of the role I'd played for so many years in a law firm and do the kinds of things as a vendor I would have wanted my vendor to do as a law firm. Another person who was influential around that for me was Barry Solomon, whom some of you know. He's now with Foundation Software, but was with Interface Software, and I worked with him at Sidley. And when I told him about my change to Latera and my fear of this, moving to the dark side, he said, but Joy, you've been selling software to lawyers for 25 years. You just didn't get paid for it. And that also gave me insight into what made a good vendor, in my view, is someone who talked about the benefits and helped people see what was in it for them to do change. So those were great. And then my final note here is for those of you who may not know, I have another stage of my journey coming up. Maybe I should call moving to the rainbow side. I don't know. But I'm soon to become the CEO of ILTA, the International Legal Technology Association, which requires knowledge of law firms and vendors and business and all of it. So I think it will bring all these things together. And Simon, we might have to do another one of these in 6 months or so.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. And I can't imagine there's anyone out there that doesn't know that you're leaving based on the amount of goodwill that you've received over the past few days. All right, thank you, Joy. I learned a few things there as well. So onto my story. So keeping with the motoring theme here, I love to drive my Mini Cooper around mountain roads, but I don't necessarily like straight roads, and that's how my career has been as well. This is more the sort of representation of my career path, and I actually started off driving on the other side of the road in the UK where I grew up. You can see the little marker on the road is on the left side, and I was actually on the other side of the road, I guess, to start with, in that I was on a completely different career path. And I was working for a fitness center management company, managing gyms. And I managed a gym for Reuters before it became Thomson Reuters. And then I moved to Freshfields, one of the Magic Circle firms in London. And I was managing their gym for a few years and doing fitness training sessions with their lawyers. And I befriended the IT team because I thought, this is really cool what's happening. It was in 1995, the firm first got email, and it was only internal email at that time. And we got training on it in the gym, and I thought, this is cool. I wonder if I could do this. And I kind of, my interest in technology just really developed from there. I started building websites for people, and I was really trying to make that transition to figure out what I could do. And I ended up talking to somebody in the gym that was a regional IT manager for the Hong Kong office, and they were telling me, oh, we can't get any of the trainers to come over to do an Outlook rollout in Hong Kong. And I just said jokingly, I'd do it. And that kind of snowballed. And they said, well, actually, you're really patient with people. You're very clear in how you're articulating things. And you have this great interest in technology. So, why shouldn't we consider you? So they gave me some tests, and ultimately, I became an IT trainer. And from there, I worked in a practice group. I worked in the corporate practice group in the London office, and sat in front of these guys. Actually, taking a step back, I worked in the Hong Kong office for 3 months, traveled around Asia, rolled out Outlook, built my support and training skills during that period. But when I came back to London, they gave me a job in the corporate team. And from there, it was like, I didn't even know what a DMS was. I didn't even know really how these lawyers worked. And yet I was sitting in the practice group with people coming up to us all the time, asking us questions. And you just have to kind of learn and think on your feet. And it was a fantastic experience, even though I felt really underqualified for doing that. But I then kind of evolved into an international trainer. Whenever there was international rollout, they called on me, and I was more than happy to travel. So I went to 13 of the Freshfields offices and rolled out various software. And when I was there, I was on the ground for weeks at a time, following up and hanging out in the cafeteria, helping people with their problems. And I ended up sending out these tips called Simon Says, which in the New York office still exists to this day. So at that point, I came to the New York office once, and they said, would you like to come out for longer, because you could help us with support as we're doubling the size of this office. And they gave me a position of systems analyst for 6 months, and I just kind of learned the ropes. I was basically help desk support, training, word processing, everything. And while I was there, I joined this weird and wonderful group called the New York Word Legal User Group, and got to know people on the ground in other firms there. And even though I was over initially for 6 months, I never went back. I'm still here. And that was 18 years ago. Thankfully, I'm now a citizen, and I'm legally here. You'd be pleased to know. But then as time grew on, and I kind of built up my skills, my experience, I became assistant manager in the US region, and also got the job as global product manager for the desktop, which I thought initially was a promotion when I applied for it, but there was no additional pay or anything else. It was just more work. But it was great because I got to work with all these vendors. I got to essentially decide what document production needs we had, and then put forward proposals for products. And in 2007, I first went to ILTA, and our CIO at the time said, find me a replacement document comparison product. We are really unhappy with our current vendor. That support sucks, the product keeps crashing, people are really unhappy, find me an alternative. And that was, in the early days of Litera. They didn't have many large customers at that point. And I met Deepak at the ILTA conference. That was the first year they had a booth, I think. And we got to know each other pretty well, and I did evaluations of this product, Change Pro, and also 2 other products. And even before I had made my recommendation, I got an email from him one day from the CIO saying, if your job was on the line, which product would you pick? Because we need to make a decision right away. And I was thinking, is this his job on the line or mine? I'm not quite sure here.
I bet I could answer that for you, Simon.
Yeah. I said, look, I really think we should go with Latera here because of these reasons. And they were super responsive. That whenever there was an issue, I would get a phone call from the founder himself, and he'd get a developer on the phone, and we'd work through the issues. And it was an amazing vendor experience that ever since then I've kind of looked back to and thought, how can we continue, especially as we get larger and we're a much larger vendor now, how can we continue to give that same level of customer support? But interestingly as well, I was also a customer of Nuance for PDF products. I was also a customer of Sackett Group for MacPack numbering, a customer of iManage, and of Microsystems for DocX tools. So I kind of got used to being on that side of the buying experience and learning how that works and how to treat vendors as well and how to partner with them. And I really, when I look back now, I think actually it came naturally to me to do that, to kind of work in a partner way, because you want both sides to succeed in this relationship. And I think that isn't always the case with some firms, and it's not always the case with some vendors either. So as I continued my career path, I ended up as director of IT for the US at Freshfields. I did that for 3 years, and at the end of that, I was kind of a little burned out because we had had a few big projects that hadn't gone so well, Citrix being the main one. And we'd done a couple of office moves and, big monster projects that are kind of thankless tasks sometimes. So I was looking for what my next move might be. And as I was talking to various people, it kind of became clear to me that I needed something different from what I was doing, and not just as a, I didn't want necessarily to go into a CIO firm at a larger firm. So I talked to Deepak, and he said, we would love you to come and join us. He said, I've been saying this to you for years. I kept on saying, when you get bored, you'll come and work for us, right? And I just took it as a joke, but ultimately became real. So I moved over to the dark side, and he put my product experience to good use, and I took over product development, and we kind of ran with that. And then, there's a whole long story about what happened with Latera, because unfortunately Deepak passed away. But 3 years down the line, we had this big merger, and I got this new fancy title of VP of Product Evangelism, and I now am much more customer facing, which actually is great for me because I love to talk to customers, to understand their needs, to kind of find out what the problems are that we are really solving. And I have a great team, including Sherry Capel, Matt James, and Chuck Henrich, who are all kind of our real subject matter experts. So lots of twists and turns, lots of decision points, and there were actually lots of really influential people along the way that helped me make those changes and that saw something in me that maybe I wasn't aware of, or wasn't clear to me that I had that skill, and that helped me on that journey.
Well, just the fact that you could train lawyers to do anything, Simon, gave you a leg up on a lot of other people. But certainly what you're describing, describe Deepak to a T. he was particularly good at seeing things in other people they didn't see in themselves, which is, for all of you out there who are growing in your leadership journey, that's something to really think about. Do you have that skill of seeing things in people they can't see in themselves? And it's a good area for focus.
So.
Okay, this is not the slide we talked about yesterday, but that's all right. He did have a slide with glasses of beer on it, but he knows I don't drink beer, and he didn't have one with margaritas, so here's a surprise. But what we're trying to convey here, and hopefully one of the things you learned from us describing our journey to where we are, is that there's really not a light side and a dark side. It's really all the how we serve the lawyer side. And there's a lot more really alike than there is different. And we'll talk about some of both, but it's surprising how many of the skills and attributes and even instincts are absolutely immediately transferable back and forth between working inside a law firm and working for a vendor business partner.
So are you going to talk about what those differences are?
Yes. So, but see, since he surprised me with the slide, now I'm all messed up with my content. So there are a couple of the differences that we think are really critical. And Simon's going to talk more about the similarities. But the first one, and it's just the elephant in the room, is what I call the sales conversation. You know, anytime you're interacting with a vendor, whether it's someone in support, whether it's someone in a customer success role, your account executive, there's always that underlying conversation about money. Are you going to renew your license or pay your maintenance? Are you going to buy additional products? Are you going to change to another vendor and change the revenue stream? So the good news about that is that for most vendors, you know, customer retention and customer satisfaction are a big part of compensation, but it can make the conversation uncomfortable, particularly for those of us who have come from the law firm side. You don't like to pressure your friends, you know, into paying for stuff, but it is always underlying the conversation. I think the second big difference is what I call the look or the response. I mean, I will tell you quite honestly, there are some people that in my law firm career would have taken a call from me anytime or immediately answered any email I sent or reached out to me, that as soon as I became a vendor, simply just stopped answering emails or answering calls. And I term this broadly as the look, you know, getting the look about, you know, you're a vendor. Oh, you're a vendor, you know, got it. You know, I don't quite see you in the same way. And I have to tell you, that hasn't been most places for me, but it certainly has happened some. I had one CIO at a large firm say, well, you were a friend before, you're still a friend, you know, that doesn't change. And that's terrific, but there are others who don't see it that way. And then, you know, I think those for me are probably the two major ones. There are some others, but those are the two big ones. So Simon, you want to talk about the similarities? There are a lot of similarities in this slide.
Yeah, so really there are a lot of similarities. We could run a comparison to see what's different there. So
yeah, we need to get our embedded parts of our story. So
yeah. You know, the pressures are different. It really depends on the role. I've had two very different roles on this side of the fence, and the pressures are often more financial, and the pay structures aligned to that to motivate people in the right way. But software companies quite often measure themselves on a quarterly basis, so you have that quarterly cycle of goals that you have to work towards, and it can bring out your competitive nature. If you are a competitive person underneath, I think being on the vendor side can really play to that, and you would enjoy that side of it because you are trying to win. Right? You're trying to win deals. You're trying to beat the competition, and you're particularly in a leadership role. You're trying to rally the troops and make sure that we're all aligned and we're all pulling in the same direction to have a really strong market presence. And I look at some of the things that our competition do, and I'm like, oh, we should have done that, or I'm really dismayed at what they've done, or and it brings that out in me. But you do get to talk to a lot of people in the industry, and that's what I really love, seeing the differences in the firms and how they operate.
Yeah, me too. And it actually really helps us to elevate the vendor conversation. Because if you think about the things that are the same, there's a lot that's the same. You're accountable to your lawyers. We're accountable to you and therefore to your lawyers. You have to make your internal customers, i.e. your lawyers and secretaries and staff, happy. Well, we have to make you happy. You have to know your customers in order to deliver the right solutions. We have to do that too. You have to be responsive. We have to be responsive. You have to balance the needs of the partners and the associates and marketing and finance and secretaries. And we have to balance the needs of 1,200 odd law firms around the globe who don't all see things the same way. So that ability to talk to all of our customers and clients, as Simon said, the way that you do, really aligns us more than you would expect and lets us learn from you just as you learn from your lawyers.
Yeah, and we end up sharing information, where it's appropriate with other law firms as well, because as Joy well knows with ILTA, we are a sharing community, and people do come and ask us what's going on in the industry, what are the trends, what are you hearing out there, and we just love being part of those conversations because it helps us get a better kind of take on the marketplace, and we're just interested generally in the whole world.
And the way we look at it about that underlying sales conversation that we were talking about, is my view, Simon's view, and actually the view of pretty much our whole company, is that, and Deepak used to say, every person you talk to is a future customer. Simon and I will both sometimes say, hey, we're going to answer your question with our legal IT hat on rather than our sales hat, or vice versa, because we figure that if you trust us, and that's what we want you to do, we're going to give you good information, we're going to be responsive and accountable. Then when you have a need that matches something that we can provide, we hope you'll buy from us because you've learned to trust us and you understand that our knowledge of what your lawyers are doing sets us apart, just like your knowledge of what your lawyers are doing set you apart within your law firm.
Yeah, and we've certainly, being on law firm, we've had those crazy days where everything seems to be going wrong, right? There's partners screaming, everybody's trying to get to the bottom of what's going on with this one issue, and if it's related to our software, believe me, we understand and we will be on it, and it will get the highest level of attention on our side because we know we know how that feels, and we're willing to kind of to be the person you can offload that to a little bit, that pressure that's coming in our direction. And most of the time, people in law firms are nice about it, but serious. You get the odd one that you really does feel like they're transferring the screaming that's coming from a partner. But yeah, we understand and we're willing to take that as part of the job. So additional things that I like about this side here really is I get to travel. I get to visit a lot of places and a lot of people. And I also get to use the latest and greatest technology, and I don't have to use a DMS. So we are on Office 365 using Exchange Online. We're using the latest versions of our software. We're using Microsoft Teams to do all our communication. Not being part of a kind of a lockdown software environment is a nice thing. and certainly something that Joy and I both appreciate. So just to kind of finish things off, I think the main message that we wanted to come away from this is to say, that we're ultimately partners on this journey. We want to bring positive change to law firms. We want to offer amazing customer service, and we know you do too. And that's the journey that we're on together. And it should be a very tightly knit relationship between the vendors and the law firms. And we certainly hope that you feel you get that from us.
Absolutely. And yeah, what I would again advise all of you as you're thinking about your career, if you think about jumping to a vendor or vendor inside a law firm, remember that an awful lot of the skills are transferable, and the things you have, like your integrity, your accountability, your trustworthiness, your transparency, are just as important on the vendor side. In fact, in some ways more important than they are on the law firm side, because you have to build and maintain that trust just so people will keep paying for your software or your services. Just because Simon and I there are stormtroopers, but he also didn't pick Darth Vader with his black hat. He picked the stormtroopers with their white hat. So we see a little white hatness in the stormtroopers. We're on the dark side, but we're working for the good.
Okay, and as a final note from me, as this will be Joy's last webinar on the dark side, I just did want to say publicly how much I've enjoyed working closely with her, and how much I admire her spirit and her leadership, and most of all, her kindness, generosity, and humility. And Joy, you've made this organization so much better for being a part of it. And I strongly believe that this is one of the reasons that our four companies came together so seamlessly, is because of what you were able to to offer and bring us there. And I think the ILTA CEO job is just perfect for you. And I've no doubt that you'll be that force that brings ILTA back together again. So thank you, Joy.
And Simon, talk about surprise slides. That I definitely wasn't expecting. Working with you has been one of the great pleasures of my career. So don't be a stranger. And I thank you for that. And I thank all of you for attending today, and for being customers, being friends, being future customers, but mostly just being people who contribute to this amazing legal technology community that we have, and keep contributing. Whether you're a vendor, whether you're in a law firm, you're adding value for the practice of law everywhere. So just keep doing it.
All right, thanks everyone. We'll close out now.